So first things first, thank you very much indeed, Nicholas and the Capital Link Group, and obviously DNV for sponsoring today's event. As Nicholas said, we're obviously going to build on a lot of what we've seen today in terms of some of the main conversations around regulation, trade regulations, and some of the geopolitics. But as we do that, and my panel have already started discussing, which is great, I'm going to introduce the panel very briefly and then ask them to give a quick introduction to themselves and their companies. But delighted to be joined by Rodrigo Bermelho, who's the Director and Global Head of Shipping and Distribution at Vale, by Marie-Caroline Laurent, who's the Group Senior Vice President, Maritime Policy and Government Affairs at the MSC Group, by Emma Roberts, who's the VP Maritime and Supply Chain Excellence at BHP, and Heidi Aakre, who's the VP of Shipping at Equinor. Before we kick off, Rodrigo, I'm going to hand to you and maybe just give a quick introduction to yourself and what you're up to at Vale.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. First of all, it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for inviting me. Vale is a mining company, one of the largest mining companies in the world. I'm the Global Director for Shipping at Vale. I'm a naval architect at the background, 20 over years experience in the maritime industry, and I'm with Vale for the past 15 years. It will be a pleasure to contribute with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. So Marie-Caroline Laurent, representing today the MSC Group, Mediterranean shipping company, a small container vessel operator. What's interesting is that as I represent the group, so leading maritime policy and government affairs engagement, so looking at those discussions from all of our group perspective, not just the container liner activities, but also cruise, tugs, terminal operation as well as our whole logistic chain. So very happy to join this discussion today.
Lovely to see you, and thank you for joining us. You haven't left the cruise industry completely by staying with MSC, so containers and cruise lines. Emma.
Hi, Emma Roberts. I'm with BHP, head up the Maritime and Supply Chain Excellence team. BHP is also one of the world's largest mining companies. We've got assets in Australia and the Americas. We export iron ore, copper, coal, and soon-to-be potash to customers around the world. My team manages the inbound and outbound shipping for our company. So that's the outbound shipping of all our commodities from our mines in Australia and Chile to our customers in China, Europe, Southeast Asia, and soon to be our potash exports out of Canada. And we also manage the inbound shipping of all our products that we buy for our mines across the world. I'm very pleased to be here today.
Emma, great. I mean, and you've flown in for 24 hours, so I think we're absolutely privileged.
48 hours.
48 hours, I apologise, I've exaggerated. Heidi.
Good afternoon, my name is Heidi Aakre, and as mentioned, I'm heading up shipping on behalf of Equinor. Equinor is a majority-owned Norwegian integrated energy company owned by the state, but also listed on the stock exchange in Oslo and in New York. In my role, I'm responsible for making sure that we have the necessary fleet to lift everything we produce of oil and gas, as well as working closely with trading to make sure that when we engage in the global trading space, we have the necessary fleet capacity. We're typically not a ship owner, so we very much depend on the ship owner community to make sure that we run our business in a safe, sustainable way. It's a very, very proud moment for us to be here today and see so many people coming to Oslo. Even though I live at the head office, I would like to say, on the west coast of Norway, still we tend to come to Oslo because here's a lot of where the shipping people meet. When it comes to myself, I worked in the mid and downstream throughout my career in Equinor, within trading, within asset management, but there's always been shipping. No trading without shipping and no asset management without shipping. So that took me to US and to Singapore, and it brought me back home again to Norway. Looking forward to today and the rest of the week.
Heidi, thank you, and thank you to all of you. I think that we've heard from ship owners today, we've heard from ship financiers, we've heard from some of the tech companies, etc. But from the charterer perspective, and I think Rodrigo and Marie-Caroline, this is for yourself. What do you see as some of the major risks to your businesses right now? Marie-Caroline, let's start with yourself.
So and I guess this has been commented today at length, this is unpredictability and speed of change. Today, that are more a challenge than a risk, because especially for the MSC group, we've really built our strategy to be agile and rapid at decision. We're more a ship owner than a charterer, to be honest. Today, with our fleet composition, we have more than 900 vessels, and out of those 900, I think a bit less than 200 are chartered today. But this is really more, we used to have to be flexible, but today what is the main challenge is the speed of the decision and the, let me say, sometimes the irrationality of those changes, which make them difficult to anticipate.
Irrationality, I think we'll stay with that. But Rodrigo, firstly, Vale's perspective and risks that you're seeing currently.
Yes, we all acknowledge that the dry bulk market is very challenging and volatile. But in terms of the recent discussions that we are very confident for the future. We see the Chinese economy very resilient, and we have built a very sophisticated value chain that can adapt in terms of products and distribution centers, how we can deliver the right products to the markets. And also the decarbonization, that's another great topic that's under discussion. We see it as a long-term trend, so we can discuss whether it will go faster or not, but it's inevitably, it's gonna happen. So I don't see it as a risk, I see it more as a challenge. So in general, our challenge has been always the same. Vale is far away from the clients, and we have always innovated and made significant changes in our shipping, so that we can keep our competitiveness, so that we can have a stable production and use the state-of-the-art tools to predict the vessel's locations and how going to be our exposure to the spot market, so that we can have a previsibility on the freight, and this is what we need for the future.
Thanks for that, Rodrigo. So the usual resilience that Vale has shown for many, many years will still continue. I think Emma and Heidi, let's talk about US trade representation, USTR. It's a big thing that's been discussed today, clearly in terms of what impacts does it have. We've heard various, I'm going to say, degrees of freedom and flexibility. But how do you see it affecting commodity flows? And I think what are the sort of steps that your companies are taking to sort of shore up some of that supply and demand potential imbalance?
Yeah, thanks, Andy. Before I address that, I just want to sort of confirm what Rodrigo said in terms of the bulk market. We are very positive about commodity flows across our portfolio, iron ore, copper and metallurgical coal. So we still see very strong demand for those commodities across the globe, and our portfolio is very resilient. Like Vale's. On the USTR proposal, for us, our market into the US is very small, so the direct impact for BHP is actually, quite minimal. But obviously, it can have sort of global impacts in terms of inefficiencies which are built into the shipping market and any inflation. I guess on the bulk side, we think the impact will be less because the US is actually a very small part of the bulk sector, and so it will probably be containers, as I think a few people have mentioned today, that will be more impacted. If we look at BHP specifically, some of our uranium, which is a byproduct of our copper mine in South Australia, Olympic Dam, is shipped via containers to customers across the world, but also including the US. So we could see some impact there. I think, as a number of people have said today, we think the liner companies will probably shuffle their fleet, and we are sort of working very closely with our container liner companies that we use to minimise any impact. we'll have potash, our new commodity, which is in Saskatchewan in Canada, that will be going to the US. That's via rail. So at the moment, that won't be impacted. The other aspect we're looking at is some of the smaller vessels, which will be exempt under the revised USTR proposal, some of the sizes that we use to ship our copper concentrates to across the globe, not particularly into the US. But if demand for those vessels sort of grows, we can see some impact there. So at the moment, Andy, I think we're sort of just watching and waiting. Direct impact minimal, but obviously indirect impact could be broader.
Super, thanks for that, Emma. Heidi, I'd welcome your view on this as well, please.
Yeah, what to say? If I go a little bit down the memory lane, in Norway, we learned from our big brothers and sisters abroad when it comes to developing the oil and gas business. And one of the measures that was clear to us then was sort of the predictable framework to attract investors at the NCS. And I think that has been the legacy in Norway for many, many years. And we learned from the US. So when I opened up the newspapers earlier this year, I found myself in a bit of denial. What else to say? Despair, confusion. This cannot be true. And then you lean back and the rational part of the brain start to kick in and you work yourself through it so you understand what this is about and also try to understand what can it become to be. And I think that's where we are now. For us, it's important to make sure that we don't lose sight of the long-term efforts. I assume most of us here today, we are focused on bringing goods or energy to the market in a cost-efficient way, in a safe way, and in a sustainable way. To us, we will optimize as best as we can. We do export out of the US, we do import to the US. So clearly, we need to look into our fleet commitment and to our customer counterparty portfolio and see how we can optimize this to the best of efficient value chains. We do believe it's moving in a right or better direction. But clearly, we're eager to see what comes out of the October decisions to be made.
Thank you for that, Heidi. The pragmatism was wonderful to come through there, I think, in terms of the watch and wait as well that Emma said. Emma, coming back to yourself as well now on BHP, obviously being considered as a market leader in terms of the charterers, in terms of setting ambitious targets, but also the investments that you've made over time in things like wind-assisted propulsion, net zero, let's say future fuels as well in terms of some of the ships that are being delivered in 2026 with ammonia. How do you balance the decarbonisation initiatives and the targets that you've set as an organisation with the competitiveness and commerciality of the industry?
Yeah, Andy, I think BHP, first and foremost, has made quite ambitious targets of decarbonisation across our entire business for many years, and we were really an industry leader in that space. So that's across our mine sites. But also through our Scope 3 emissions, which is the sort of targets and public goals we've made in relation to the shipping of our commodities. And so this is the decarbonisation agenda for our shipping sector is very much part of an organisational focus. The team that I lead has made great strides in leading the decarbonisation from a charterer's perspective, whether it's in sort of LNG dual-fuelled vessels that we chartered in 2020, where we partnered with one of our vessel owners on a long-term contract for a number of vessels. We've also used and introduced biofuels across our fleets, and we've done that since 2021. As Andy said, we've also looked at sort of efficiency of the fleet through wind-assisted propulsion, and now we're looking at ammonia as well. And the way we approach that is in close collaboration and partnership across the supply chain, but particularly with our shipping, our vessel owner companies who we partner with and then take out long-term contracts with fuel providers and also with our customers. So we see a big demand from our customers for lower emissions across the supply chain, including shipping our commodities to them for them to then use to produce steel, for example. So we've found partnership is absolutely the right approach, and we do feel a sense of accountability as a charterer to support that the decarbonisation journey. Now, it comes at a cost, there is no doubt about that, and alternative fuels are still very much at a premium, and so we have to consider that as we would consider any investment across our business, and we do sort of cost analysis and calculate NPV for any investment decision, and that's always a big factor. We have found that sharing the premium across with the vessel owners and the customers has been successful, and so we think that will continue to be the way we approach it. But with the IMO net zero framework, that makes this more attractive to us, particularly on time charters where we pay for fuel. So suddenly the cost analysis changes with that coming on board. So there is absolutely no way we're going to sort of stop what we're doing, and we'll continue to push forward.
Thank you very much indeed for that, Emma. I think it's summarised it really nicely, and it's sort of a good summary of what we've heard from probably 3 or 4 of the other previous panels around bold targets, partnerships and shared responsibility. Rodrigo, moving to yourself, and obviously as Vale is one of the biggest bulk charterers in the world as well, you haven't sat by the sidelines waiting for others to do this as well. You've made a lot of investments in carbon-saving options, multi-fueled tanks, some of the investments that you've made, but you've also invested in wind-assisted propulsion, where you've retrofitted a number of your chartered ships as well. The question for yourself is, how do you share the risk of some of these investments with those partners?
Thanks for the question. Just a little bit of context before. We have a long history of design innovative ships. Fuel consumption, energy efficiency, and now emissions is a question of competitiveness for us. So when the discussion about decarbonizing shipping ramped up, we started a R&D program called Eco Shipping, where we are identifying and piloting various technologies. Wind assist technology is one of the main technologies that we have identified. We have already 5 ships installed with wind-assisted propulsion, and we will end 2025 with another 2, total 7. And there is a new generation of Guaibamax ships. They will all be rotor sails fitted. So we really believe it's an important technology as part of this problem that we have to address. Now, in terms of risk of the technology, I can see 2 aspects of it. The financial aspect, we have different ways that we are doing. In some of the projects, we are financing the projects, but we also have owners that after our projects, they have decided to invest as well and cooperate with us in terms of knowledge. And there are owners that are doing this by themselves, and we have awarded them contracts. So I would say in finance terms, normally if you are investing in a technology, you expect to have the savings. But in terms of more broader perspective of risk, when we talk about these new technologies, I think of de-risking the technology as a whole, because these technologies, they need to mature. So when we invest in one of these technologies, we are helping the makers and we are helping the shipyards to identify how to make the best use, what are the critical points, how to make it fast and cheaper. We are also learning how to collect data, because these are all new technologies in the new performance way, the new performance measurements. And by addressing the right way to collect data and treat this data. We are also helping the makers to develop a performance clause so that the owners can buy this equipment and be confident that they will receive a specific return over that. And also in terms of terminal, because we have 3 very big ports in Brazil, it's important for us to test this technology and develop the means to vet the vessels that will have this technology in the future. So we have learned a lot in terms of how to address the pilots, to bring vessels with sails, what are the changes in the mooring, in the loading. So we are also de-risking this technology so the owners can be more comfortable to advance, make their own decisions, sometimes in partnership with us, sometimes by themselves if they have their own agenda, but they can count on us to share the knowledge, to share the best practice and the lessons that we learn so that we can make faster.
Thanks very much indeed for that, Rodrigo. So multiple different contractual modules, or modules, let's say modular approaches by the sounds of things, which is really flexible.
Yes, it's pretty flexible. We don't own any ships, so they're all chartered ships. And we, of course, we don't plan to invest in all of the ships, but we invest in some of them, and we are open to discuss with the ship owners.
Fabulous, thank you for that. Heidi, switching gears slightly, I think, to fuel question. And I think with Equinor being a listed energy company, 67% owned by the Norwegian state, you've invested in a huge number of projects, I think, over the last few years, sort of 24 new buildings from 2020 to 2026, LPG, LNG propulsion primarily, partnering in the Northern Lights program as well, sort of for these, let's say, CO2 transport carriers, again, which are LNG fueled. So a bit of a daft question. How do you see LNG will play out in 2030 and beyond in the shipping landscape?
Where's your crystal ball? Where do we see it? I think for Equinor being a fuel producer and at the same time being a global trader and a global charter, we have been on this journey to learn about how can we, together with our partners, develop our fleet commitment into a fleet with less of emission footprint. That meant that we were a bit of an early mover on dual fuel LNG. I think we were one of the first on dual fuel LPG. It's definitely been a learning journey, for good and for bad. Sometimes the operations desk are screaming at us, because it's causing problems. But still, we have tried to follow through, and we do see that it has been to our advantage, mostly. We've also explored dual fuel methanol, and we are into some biofuels as well, both as a producer, but definitely as a consumer of fuel to the fleet. We look upon LNG and LPG as the alternative fuels. So we put them a little bit in buckets, and then you have more of the emerging fuels, which is more into the methanol and maybe ultimately ammonia. We don't talk too much about hydrogen. Maybe others do. But I do think it's fair to say that we do see LNG sitting into our portfolio for longer. But that does not mean that we're not pursuing the emerging fuels as well. So we engage in that space with ship owners, shipbuilders, R&D, academia, etc., to explore that space. But with the Fuel EU Maritime, it seems like LNG is going to sit pretty nicely in there until 2035 from a penalty point of view. However, we do see it being, there comes with some penalty when you think about the LNG upstream production as such. So for us, we are definitely in there on the LNG for longer. But one size does not fit all. So we're into the smaller segments, the bigger segments. We trade regionally, we trade globally, we trade in Brazil, to US, etc. And even though we like to say that we do think LNG from a bunkering point of view had really developed to become a flexible bunkering opportunity for us, we still see that we come and fall short with the opportunity. So then we switch to the fuel that it's the alternative. So we need to be practical, we need to be realistic, but at the same time making sure that we don't lose sight of sort of the long-term strategic effort towards the zero. But as I said, we need efficient value chains to bring energy to the market.
That was a pretty good go at a crystal ball, actually. So fantastic. Thank you for that. Marie-Caroline, MSC, as you said, well, probably the world's largest shipping company now with 900 ships, 200 under charter. Been looking at LNG and biofuels, I think, quite significantly. Significant investments in 2022 with MSC's biofuel solutions. Clearly, everybody's talking about it. There's no such thing as a single biofuel. It's going to have lots of certification associated with it, and it's going to be pretty scarce. So how do you feel that this fits into Maritime in terms of part of the potential solution?
So in terms of our approach, sustainability has been a commitment also since several years. We're a family-owned company, private company, and has put as a priority this transition. Like what Heidi has explained, based on our own activities and deployment, we've made a strong choice for LNG. We have more than 150 vessels on order, 40 in operation today, soon. So we will, so clearly when we make that assessment in terms of which solution do we have today on the table that allows us to support this transition in the coming years, LNG has been one of the preferred option. Like Heidi, we are looking at other options as well, of course, but this is where regulation plays a key role. And I think this is one of these unique situations we have with this new industrial revolution that is not driven necessarily by efficiency, but by purely regulation. And so until we have a stable body of regulation with actual life cycle values, certification, harmonized certification, this is something that we as owner, as a ship owner, will need to make our own decision, trying to remain flexible in our options. So LNG remains the strongest option on the table today. We indeed also, of course, have developed a biofuel solution that was more triggered by the request from our customers, to be honest, for their scope 3 emissions. So looking at investing into some drop-in biofuel, again, a very practical approach of what do we have today. The big question mark for biofuel will be the volume available, especially as we are much more in competition with other transport sectors. But this will still be part of the mix. And this is where certification plays a big role. As we know, the European Union already has some very strict certification rules around biofuel. We're looking at waste-based, second, third generation of biofuel, but with certification that will be needed to be recognized internationally. And we may have seen recently with one particular case of a biofuel product where there were some questions around certification recognition by the European Union. And de facto, the immediate result of that was us halting a purchase decision for a specific product. So we see that the market is very nervous, and any decision, political decision or regulatory uncertainty that is created by government can have a significant impact on our investment choice or direct purchase of alternative fuels.
Thanks, Marie-Caroline. And you've mentioned regulation there a lot. And I think we'd already kind of discussed, I think, on other panels around, let's say, Fit for 55, MEPC 83, etc., rewriting potentially charter party contracts and changing the relationships between charterers and owners, but also sort of, I think, concluding on the fact that it's provided clarity without certainty, which can lead to chaos. But I think, Heidi, again, coming back to yourself, I think in terms of electrification and the investments that we see there as becoming part of the journey that needs to be taken on decarbonisation, the investments that you've made as an organisation, I think, around hybrid solutions, etc., as well, primarily in the OSV or offshore support vessel fleets. But how do you see electrification becoming part of this decarbonisation journey? Because we talk about fuels and we talk about wind-assisted propulsion and everything else, but hybrid solutions.
Electrification is a very interesting topic in Norway. Much of our industry was vested on the fact that what you might experience visiting Norway, we have a lot of rain. We have a lot of mountains, and then you can produce power or electricity. And it used to come kind of for free once upon a time before we started to think that we really wanted to protect Mother Nature also from building out the electricity industry in Norway. However, when it comes to us in Equinor, we have pursued electrification of our offshore installations as such. I think some 25% of the GHG emission in Norway stems from the gas turbines that we run the offshore installations with in the North Sea. So what we're trying to do is to do some electrification, power shore electricity for the offshore installation. In some business cases, it works quite well to fully electrify. In other cases, it's more difficult, and in some, maybe not even possible. So that goes for sort of the bigger emitter side of it. Then, of course, electrification is also part of our thinking when it comes to the service vessels and maybe even the tankers as such in the years to come. So we have been a bit of a pioneer when it comes to the service vessel to have a hybrid and have the flexibility to use onshore power for some of the service vessels. We try to do our utmost to make that happen when it comes to the service vessels that is there for our renewable industry. Dogger Bank is supported by electrical, partly service vessels, and we expect more to come. Also, with the regulations, we do see an uptake of electricity, maybe for onshore power to the deep sea tanker fleet. And we are discussing that as part of our business case when we liaise with some of you when it comes to new build activities. But again, it takes time, and it has to be, in our view, fit for purpose, and it needs to be supported by a true business case that take into account bottom line as well as the emission footprint we leave into this industry.
Thank you, Heidi. And staying with EU ETS, Rodrigo, I think around the very large ore carriers, obviously, that are carrying ore for you guys from Brazil to Europe, is that affecting any of your decision-making thoughts or looking, or making you think about the way you look at your decarbonisation strategy?
Thanks, Andy. Yes, we shipped to Europe. Last year, we shipped 10 million tons of iron ore to Europe. To the Rotterdam port, we can bring some of our VLOCs. And this is an operation that's increasing. I don't see much change in the short term because we have been preparing for the decarbonization for a very long time. In terms of alternative fuels, we are studying this for more than a decade. And as I mentioned, we established an R&D program 6 years ago, testing various technologies, the next generation of ships that we sign contracts for a very long term. They have all technologies that we have tested, and they also have optionalities for multiple types of alternative fuels. So no in the short term, but it will happen in the more mid and long term. Our strategy, our decarbonization strategy is focused on implementing as quick as possible all the energy saving devices that we can. We believe there's an opportunity to save fuels there, and it will always pay back in a future of a more expensive fuel price. In terms of alternative fuels, what we are building is the optionality. So we now design ships that, of course, we have made a choice for the short term, which is methanol or ethanol, green methanol, ethanol, but all the designs of our vessels, they also are LNG ready and ammonia ready. So we want to make a next step, but also we want to be able to switch to perhaps a more appropriate alternative fuels in the future when the landscape's more clear. And of course, as these vessels and they start being delivered and we operate, we will look into how we can provide low carbon freight to the low carbon products that we have, because the decarbonization is at the center of strategy for Vale. We supply high content iron ore, which is important for reducing the emissions of the steel mills. And we're also developing products like the briquettes that have much less emission during the fabrication and are adapted to the electric arc furnace to reduce the emissions of the steel production. So being able to deliver these products in a low carbon freights, it will be an advantage in the future. That's what we are aiming.
Brilliant. Thank you for that, Rodrigo. And then Emma, coming back to yourself, I think in terms of how BHP is looking at this as well, because you've made some of the commitments. You've gone past readiness to capable with some of the ships that you're looking to charter. How are you looking at the availability of some of these, let's say, fuels that IMO is now dictating that we use?
Yeah, sure. And as I said, across we've sort of gone at this a number of angles, whether it was dual fueled LNG, and then biofuels drop-in that we use across our trading routes, and then now looking at ammonia. I think a number of panellists recognised it this morning. If we look particularly at ammonia, it is still there are still a number of challenges ahead, particularly from our perspective. Well, first of all, availability of ammonia, but then also the infrastructure. So we still think there's a way to go on getting the infrastructure at the ports to allow bunkering in a safe way. So that will take time. We are working closely with the MPA in Singapore, who are doing fantastic work in innovation in the bunkering space there. They did it for LNG, they're now doing it for ammonia. And then also the Pilbara Port Authority in Western Australia. So partnering with them to, in pilot trials, to really try and drive the bunkering infrastructure that is going to be required. I think then, as I also mentioned earlier, this fuel that is available at the moment, so biofuels, for example, still comes at a cost. So that it is a decision we have to make, and we usually do it sort of, vessel by vessel, sort of chartering decision by chartering decision, based on where the vessel is going, where our products are being shipped to. But I think it's going to take time and partnership across the value stream to allow us to continue to move forward. So what we are doing at the moment is doing what we can now with sort of mechanisms that are available now, and then also looking forward and sort of keeping our options open.
Thank you very much indeed. And Emma, coming to you, Heidi, I think now, in terms of the fortunate enough to have an energy company on the panel as well, in terms of charterers looking to get some security around future fuel supplies, etc. What do you think charterers should be doing today to work with some of the, let's say, major energy companies around the world to try and shore up some of those supplies and remove some of the ambiguity that we have?
I think from a leadership point of view, in these changing times, I think it's extremely important that we strategize. Most human brains tends to want to go straight into operational mode and work short term, and many of us are probably incentivized also to deliver short term. But I think there's something about realizing that this change journey will take strategic mindset, strategic leadership, and commitment. But at the same time, don't lose sight of the sharp end, the operational desk, and help them, whether it's digital, whether it's understanding optimization, whether it's about educating them into what they can offer into this space. And then I think there's a lot about partnership. I think for us, we enjoy the partnership and the JV in Northern Lights. I think it would have been extremely difficult to lift that alone. We learn from each other, we inspire, we quarrel, we discuss, and then we kind of come to some kind of a solution that makes sense. But it's not a given in that case, with the commodity that no one really wants, where to put it, and it's going to sit somewhere underground for longer. What kind of value do you put into that? And on top of that, there's technology. And then you can move into maybe the easier part, the bio, I shouldn't say ammonia is easy, but it's doable. And then I think there is this partnership mentality that is needed. And I also learned a lot from being engaged with Maersk McKinney Center. We've been lucky enough to be together with others in the Sea Cargo Charter and here in Norway, where we share. I think we used to be so competitive and looking after each other's book. And now this transparency that we have something we need to solve for makes us a much more intelligent leadership course globally than we used to be. So I think we need to work together and we need to share facts and we need to be honest what's doable short term and what will take for longer to get to where we want to be, which in our view is net zero in 2050.
Yeah,
Would
no,
you like to
sorry.
add a
Yeah, I
comment?
just
Please
wanted
do.
to add maybe one perspective is also for shipping to be explicitly included in national sustainable energy policy. If I think we can count on one hand the number of countries which have included maritime in their renewable energy policy plans, and you can see that aviation gets much more benefits and incentives, for instance, without even speaking about roads. So, so making sure, so the work we do together, collaboratively as a sector, is important. Lifting our head a bit and looking also at the cross-sectoral perspective, access to that biomass that we will need in one way or another. I had a recent discussion with a methanol producer who was basically coming to me to say, please convince me that I need to do maritime, because basically for the moment, I'm just going to focus on aviation. So you have this kind of conversation with energy supplier that also need to be addressed, and that belongs to maritime being more explicitly integrated in broader energy policies.
Thank you very much indeed for that, Marie-Caroline. And I'm going to say thank you very much indeed to everybody in the panel. I think, it's been a great debate. Thank you for that. I think in terms of uncertainty, I think what I've heard is the response from the charterers is targets. It's going to be ambition and targets. It's going to be about partnerships. It's going to be about shared responsibilities, but in a pragmatic way. So please do join me in saying a huge thank you to our panelists today. Thank you.